Bolt Nation, something is happening in Los Angeles, and it is not small. The Chargers are leaving clues all over this offseason, and those clues could end up changing the entire way we look at this team going into the year. We are talking about possible help for Justin Herbert, a quiet but important move in the trenches, a huge decision on Johnston, and draft signals that may be telling us way more than people realize. When all these little sparks start popping at the same time, it stops looking random and starts feeling like the buildup before a storm. And if you ride with the Chargers every single day, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and jump in the comments right now because this offseason still feels like it has one more big jolt left in it. Let's get straight to the biggest headline because the Chargers still need help at wide receiver. And at this point, that is not just fan frustration talking. That is one of the clearest realities of this entire offseason. Keenan Allen is still out there. The team still has not landed that true difference maker on the outside, the kind of weapon who changes the gravity of the offense the second he steps on the field. And that is why the Jennings conversation keeps getting louder. The fact is simple. He is still unsigned. The market did not break the way many expected, and the longer that goes on, the more his price tag could slide. That is where this starts getting very interesting for the Bolts, because Jennings makes a ton of sense for what this team actually needs. He is not just a flashy name for social media hype. He is physical, dependable, tough, and built for those pressure moments when the offense needs somebody to win outside, move the chains, and give Justin Herbert a target he can trust. That matters. When people talk about the Chargers needing a boundary receiver with reliable hands and a grown man game, that description starts sounding a whole lot like Jennings. This is not about chasing a headline. This is about filling a role that has been staring the front office in the face. And then there is the layer that makes this feel even more real. Offensive coordinator Mike McDaniel knows Jennings from San Francisco. Now, to be clear, that does not guarantee anything. A connection is not a contract. But when a coach knows a player's mindset, knows how he competes, and understands exactly how he fits inside an offense, that changes the temperature of the conversation. Suddenly, it is not just, can this guy help? Now it becomes, what is the right number for a player who already checks the boxes we need? That is a different kind of discussion. That is the kind of discussion that can quietly turn into a move. Of course, there is another side to this. The Chargers have not exactly looked like a team eager to throw money around without discipline. Their biggest free agent deal so far was for center Tyler Biadasz, which tells you this front office is trying to be measured, maybe even surgical. So the real question is whether Joe Ortiz would open the checkbook if Jennings' asking price drops into a range that feels more comfortable. Because if that number comes down enough, this stops being a dream and starts looking like a market opportunity. And market opportunities are exactly the kind of moves that can flip an offseason on its head. Now, while everybody is focused on the shiny skill position names, the Chargers also made a quieter move that deserves more respect than it is getting. They signed guard Coyote Aika, and no, this is not the kind of move that breaks the internet, but it might be one of those under-the-radar pickups that matters more in November than it does in March. Aika is 27 years old, came into the league as an undrafted free agent after the 2021 draft, and carved his path the hard way. He spent time with the Eagles, bounced through practice squad life, landed with the Lions, and in 2025 he appeared in 13 games and started 4 times at guard. So this is not some mystery project. This is a guy who has seen live action and knows how to survive when the lights come on. And for the Chargers, that matters. This team cannot afford to go into a season acting like offensive line depth is some side issue. If you want to protect Justin Herbert, if you want the run game to hold up, if you want to survive the long grind of an NFL season, you need credible bodies up front. You need competition. You need adults in the room. Aika may not be a superstar, but moves like this help build the floor of your roster. And sometimes the floor is what keeps the whole house from shaking apart. This is the kind of move that tells you the Chargers are still working the edges, still trying to make sure they are not one injury away from chaos. Now, let's be fair, this signing does not magically solve the interior offensive line. It does not erase other needs. It does not mean the Chargers should stop looking at guard or stop building through the trenches. But it does show direction. It shows they are not asleep. It shows they understand roster building is not just about stars and splash moves. Sometimes the smartest teams stack useful pieces until the depth chart stops looking fragile. And when those quiet moves start piling up, the whole picture starts changing. Then we get to the topic that might split this fan base right down the middle. Johnston. This is where things get complicated because the Chargers have a huge decision to make on his 5th-year option. And that decision says a lot about how they see him. how much patience they still have, and how much they believe his ceiling is still sitting out there waiting to explode. If they pick up that option, Johnston would be lined up to make around $16 million in 2027. So the question is obvious, and it is the kind of question that can light up the comments in a hurry. Is he worth that kind of money? If you look at it cold, there is no easy answer. Early in his career, Johnston struggled with drops and consistency. There were moments when it looked like the first-round label was getting heavier on his shoulders instead of lifting him up. But it is also true that he flashed real ability. Early in 2025, it felt like he might finally be turning the corner. Then he faded for stretches in the middle of the season, only to reappear late with a pair of strong performances in weeks 16 and 17. So the final picture is messy. He is not a clean breakout story, but he is also not a dead-end player. He is still sitting in that dangerous middle ground where belief and frustration are fighting every week. What makes this even more fascinating is that the Chargers reportedly still believe in him. That part matters. This does not sound like empty podium talk. The read coming out of the building is that decision-makers in Los Angeles genuinely like Johnston and still believe in what he can become. That changes everything. Teams do not give up easily on first-round talent when they still think the explosion is in there. And if the organization still sees upside, it would take a real offer to pull them off that belief. But here comes the harsh reality. Even if the Chargers were open to trading him, what exactly is the market? Johnston had 735 yards and 8 touchdowns last season on 51 catches. Those are useful numbers, but they are not the numbers of a true alpha wide receiver. And with him heading into a contract year, the leverage is not exactly on Los Angeles' side. Another team might offer a day 3 pick, maybe a rotational player. But is that really the kind of return the Chargers would view as fair for a former first-rounder they still believe in? Probably not. And when your internal belief is stronger than the outside market, the most likely outcome is usually the simplest one. You keep the player and bet on one more leap. So that is where this stands right now. A trade is possible in theory, sure, but in reality, bringing Quentin Johnston back still feels like the most likely path. Whether they pick up the 5th-year option is a separate conversation. But moving him for a lukewarm return would not match the way this organization appears to view him. That is what makes this such a pressure point in the offseason. It is not just about one player. It is about whether the Chargers trust their own development process enough to stay the course. And finally, let's talk draft season, because the Chargers have started bringing in top 30 visits, and these meetings always get people buzzing for a reason. No, a top 30 visit does not mean a player is definitely getting drafted by that team. That needs to be said. But it does mean the front office wants more information. It means they want to dig into medicals, character, fit, and whether the player belongs in their long-term picture. That matters. These visits are not random field trips. They are part scouting, part detective work, and part future planning. The names tied to these visits so far are tight end Oscar Delp, cornerback Dalen Everett, linebacker Harold Perkins Jr., and wide receiver Casey Concepcion. Right away, that tells you the Chargers are not zeroed in on just one area. They are scanning multiple layers of the roster. Delp, Everett, and Perkins feel like the kind of prospects you study closely if you are searching for value later on day 2 or early on day 3. But the name that really jumps off the page is Concepcion, because Concepcion changes the energy of the conversation. He posted 919 yards and 9 receiving touchdowns at Texas A&M, brings real burst, can line up inside or outside, and has the kind of field-stretching juice that instantly gets fans dreaming about what Justin Herbert could do with another explosive weapon. If you are trying to picture a receiver who fits the mold of a modern offensive chess piece, it is easy to see why this name would light up the room. Now, there is also the reported medical angle, since he underwent a routine arthroscopic knee procedure. That could be part of why the Chargers want more face time and more information. Again, fact first, speculation second. But here is the part that raises the tension. If the Chargers really view Concepcion as the best player available when they are on the clock, then the debate about taking a receiver in round 1 gets very real. And that is where the fan base starts dividing into camps. One side says the team has to keep attacking the trenches or add to the pass rush. The other side looks at Herbert and says if an electric weapon is sitting there, you do not overthink it. You pull the trigger. And if Joe Ortiz keeps following value the way he has in previous drafts, you cannot rule that out. If the board says receiver, the board says receiver. That is why this offseason feels so charged right now. None of these individual stories alone guarantees some earth-shaking move is coming. But when you stack them together, the picture starts buzzing. The Chargers may still be hunting for a wide receiver upgrade. They are adding depth in the trenches. They are weighing a massive call on Johnston. They are doing homework on draft prospects who could reshape the offense or reinforce the roster in key spots. These are not random headlines floating in space. They feel like puzzle pieces, and the image is starting to come into focus. And that is the big takeaway for Bolt Nation right now. The Chargers do not look done, not even close. The storm clouds are gathering, the pressure is rising, and it still feels like Los Angeles could have one more move that changes the whole mood around this team. So if you are riding with the Chargers through every twist of this offseason, make sure you are subscribed, hit the like button, and drop your take in the comments. Which of these storylines has the best chance to change the Chargers season? Because one thing is clear, every move matters now, and this fan base can feel the voltage building.